She was just a maid, invisible in his world of wealth, until one night he found her studying in secret, a billionaire, a girl with a hidden past, a love that defied fate. When Alexander uncovered Elena's secret, he didn't just change her life, she changed his forever. The Carter mansion stood like a fortress of wealth, towering over the city with its glass walls and golden chandeliers. Inside, luxury knew no bounds: polished marble floors, velvet drapes, and a silent staff that operated like a well-oiled machine. It was a world of elegance, power, and perfection, where emotions had no place. Alexander Carter, the billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises, sat in his private study, flipping through financial reports on his laptop. He was a man of control, calculating, cold, and ruthless in business. At just 34, he had built an empire, but his life felt like a meticulously crafted schedule rather than something real. People admired him, women chased him, but love was a distraction. The only sound in the vast mansion was the faint ticking of the antique grandfather clock. It was almost midnight when he finally leaned back, rubbing his temple. His work was endless, but exhaustion was a luxury he couldn't afford. His sharp blue eyes drifted towards the dimly lit hallway. Something felt different tonight. A girl with a dream, in a small corner of the mansion, past the extravagant dining hall and opulent guest suites. Elena Foster sat at the kitchen table, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her heart burning with determination. She was 23, with soft brown curls that she always kept tied back, and hazel eyes filled with silent dreams. To the world, she was just a maid, a girl who cleaned floors, dusted furniture, and carried trays of wine for billionaires who didn't even know her name. But Elena was more than that. As the rest of the staff slept, she whispered formulas to herself, scribbling in the worn-out notebook she had saved from her college days. Her hands, rough from scrubbing dishes, held a pen like it was her last weapon. Her eyes scanned the book, absorbing knowledge like a thirsty soul lost in the desert. This was her secret. Elena had once been a promising medical student, top of her class, a future doctor, a dream her late parents had believed in. But fate had other plans. After their tragic accident, debt swallowed her world. She dropped out of college and took every job she could find, just to survive, just to keep her little brother Liam in school. And now, after the long hours of cleaning and serving, she stole moments like these to keep her dream alive. Even if it was just one page a night, she refused to let go. The billionaire's curiosity. Alexander closed his laptop and stood, his instincts telling him that something wasn't right. He walked down the hall, his footsteps barely making a sound against the polished floor. As he neared the kitchen, he saw a faint glow, a soft flickering light from the other side of the doorway. He stopped. Inside, Elena sat hunched over a notebook, lost in her own world. The way the light from the small lamp illuminated her face, it was different from how she looked during the day. She wasn't just a maid, she was something else entirely. Her brows furrowed, her lips parted slightly, as she whispered an answer to herself, and the sheer intensity in her eyes made something unfamiliar stir inside him. For the first time, he saw her, not as a staff member, but as a person, and he couldn't look away. A silent observer, he stood there, watching. Minutes passed. Elena let out a frustrated sigh, rubbing her forehead. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on her, but she refused to stop. Then, just as she was about to turn the page, a deep voice shattered the silence. "What are you doing?" Elena froze, her pulse skyrocketed. Slowly she looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. Alexander Carter, standing tall, dressed in his usual crisp black suit, his piercing blue eyes bore into her. A tremor ran down her spine, her voice faltered. She hurriedly slammed her notebook shut, as if caught stealing something. Alexander took a step forward, his gaze flickering between the book and her face. "I asked you a question." His voice was quiet, yet it held an unmistakable authority. Elena swallowed hard. "I was just reviewing something." His gaze hardened. At this hour, she hesitated. How could she explain? Would he fire her, mock her? Alexander stared at her, waiting for an answer, but instead of fear, he saw something in her eyes: defiance. Not many dared to meet his gaze like that, and yet, here she was, refusing to cower, refusing to apologize for wanting more. Something in his chest tightened. "Is this a habit?" he asked, softer this time. Elena hesitated, but there was no point in lying. "Yes." His jaw clenched. "You work all day, and then you spend your nights studying." A flicker of hesitation crossed her face, but then with quiet strength, she lifted her chin. "I don't have a choice." The room fell silent. For the first time in years, Alexander felt something shift inside him. He had spent his life around power-hungry socialites, people who took their wealth for granted, women who wanted nothing more than his last name. But this girl, this Maid, she had fire, and for some reason, he wanted to know more. Unfinished business. Alexander glanced at the book in her hand. "What were you studying?" Elena hesitated, then slowly pushed the notebook toward him. He took it, flipped through the pages. Medical terminology, diagrams, study notes, handwritten and precise. His eyes snapped back to her. "You're studying medicine?" Elena's fingers curled into her lap. "I was, before my parents died." There was no self-pity in her voice, just cold, hard truth. Alexander had no idea why, but his chest tightened at her words. He handed the book back to her. She took it, bracing herself for whatever came next. But all he did was stare at her a moment longer. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Elena exhaled, feeling like she had just survived a storm. What she didn't know was that as Alexander walked back to his study, he couldn't stop thinking about her. For the first time in a long time, something had cracked through his perfectly controlled world, and he wasn't sure he liked it. But one thing was certain: he wouldn't forget her. Not now, not ever. Alexander Carter was a man of logic, a man of discipline, a man who never let emotions interfere with his world. But tonight, he couldn't focus. He sat in his study, staring at the financial reports on his screen, yet all he could see was her. Elena Foster, the maid who wasn't just a maid. The way her fingers trembled with exhaustion, but never stopped writing. The way her lips moved in whispered determination, as if every word mattered. He clenched his jaw. Why did he care? This wasn't his problem. His entire life was built on power, not sentiment. He had seen plenty of people struggle. Some begged for opportunities, others manipulated their way into wealth. But Elena, she had fire in her. She wasn't looking for handouts. She was fighting for something. And for the first time in years, Alexander found himself intrigued. He closed his laptop. Work could wait. Tonight, he wanted answers. A billionaire. In the shadows, Elena let out a tired sigh as she rubbed her forehead, trying to focus. Her body ached from a long day of cleaning, but her mind refused to surrender. Just one more chapter, she whispered to herself, flipping the page. Her world had always been a battle between survival and dreams. Most days, survival won, but in these stolen hours of the night, her dreams came alive again. She didn't hear the footsteps, didn't feel the presence in the doorway, but Alexander was there, watching. Again, this time he didn't stop himself from stepping closer. "Why medicine?" His voice was deep, cutting through the quiet kitchen like a knife. Elena gasped, her head snapping up. The notebook slipped from her fingers, landing on the table with a soft thud. "Sir." Alexander raised a hand. "Answer the question." She hesitated, then swallowed. "I wanted to be a doctor." Her voice was quieter now, but steady. "I still do." His sharp blue eyes flickered over her face. "And yet you're here."
scrubbing floors instead of saving lives. Elena's jaw clenched. She wasn't naive. She knew how the world saw her, a maid, a nobody. But she wasn't ashamed of her struggle. She met his gaze head on. I had no choice. For the first time, Alexander wished she would lie, because the truth twisted something inside him. No choice. Those two words haunted him. He had spent his entire life creating choices, building an empire where he controlled every outcome. But Elena, she had no choices, only sacrifices. And yet, she never gave up. She fought. Alexander leaned forward, bracing his hands on the table. Tell me everything. A past that hurts. Elena hesitated. No one had ever asked. No one had ever cared. But something about Alexander's gaze made her walls crumble. So, she told him about her childhood, about growing up in a small apartment with parents who believed in her dreams, about her little brother, Liam, who still needed her, about the day her world collapsed when her parents died in a car crash, leaving her drowning in debt, forcing her to drop out of medical school and work just to survive. Alexander listened, really listened. For a man used to boardroom negotiations and business takeovers, this was different. This was raw, real. Her voice trembled when she spoke about Liam, about how she worked 2 jobs just so he wouldn't have to live the same fate. Her hands, small and delicate, were rough with calluses from scrubbing floors, yet they were meant to heal, to save. And for the first time, Alexander felt something break inside him. This woman, this maid, had lost everything, and yet, she still dared to dream. He had never met anyone like her. A silent promise. Elena looked away, suddenly self-conscious. I'm sorry, she said softly, fingers tracing the edges of her notebook. I didn't mean to. Don't. Her eyes snapped up. Alexander's gaze burned into hers, something unreadable in his expression. You don't have to apologize, he said, his voice quieter now, almost gentle. Elena's breath hitched. For years, she had fought alone. For years, she had carried her burdens in silence. But right now, in this moment, she wasn't alone, and that terrified her. She quickly stood, hugging her notebook to her chest. I should get back to work. But before she could step away, Alexander caught her wrist. It was barely a touch, just the light brush of his fingers against her skin. Yet, it sent a shock through her entire body. She froze. He stared at her hand in his. It was small, fragile, but it had strength, just like her. A muscle ticked in his jaw. He hadn't meant to grab her, but now that he had, he couldn't seem to let go. He released her slowly, fingers lingering for just a second longer than necessary. Go, he said, his voice deeper now, rougher. But we're not done talking. Elena nodded stiffly, before rushing out of the kitchen, heart pounding. She didn't know what had just happened. All she knew was that Alexander Carter wasn't the cold-hearted man everyone thought he was. And that was dangerous, because if she wasn't careful, she might just fall for him. Alexander Carter sat in his penthouse office, overlooking the glittering skyline of New York City. The city was alive, lights flickering, cars honking, people chasing their ambitions. Yet, despite the grandeur, his mind was elsewhere, on her. Elena Foster, the maid with calloused hands, but the heart of a fighter. He had spent years mastering the art of detachment, keeping emotions locked away, untouched by the struggles of others. But for the first time in a very long time, he felt something foreign. Guilt that a woman like Elena, with dreams so pure and ambitions so strong, was stuck cleaning his mansion instead of changing lives in a hospital. Guilt that despite everything, he had the power to help her, and yet, he didn't know why he hesitated. Was it because he feared getting too involved, or was it because he was already too involved? A sharp knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Sir, your next meeting is in 10 minutes, his assistant Jake reminded him. Alexander exhaled slowly. For the first time ever, business didn't feel like the most important thing. The change in the air. Elena had tried, really tried, to pretend like her late-night conversation with Alexander hadn't happened. She threw herself into work, scrubbing floors, dusting shelves, and folding clothes. But no matter how much she busied herself, his presence lingered in her mind. The way his piercing blue eyes had softened when she spoke about her past, the way his voice had lost its usual coldness, and most dangerously, the way her heart had pounded when he touched her wrist. No, she couldn't go there. She was a maid. He was a billionaire. He was a billionaire. Their worlds weren't meant to intertwine. But even as she told herself that, she couldn't ignore the shift in the air. Something had changed, and it scared her. A different side of him. That evening, Elena was dusting the bookshelves in the study when she felt it again. The presence, the unspoken energy that always told her he was near. She turned, heart skipping a beat, as she found Alexander leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Sir," she greeted cautiously, gripping the dusting cloth like it was a lifeline. Alexander's gaze flickered to the book in her hands, an old medical journal she had absent-mindedly picked up. "Still reading?" he asked, voice quieter than usual. Elena swallowed. "I try to, whenever I get time." His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. "Then it's time you had more time." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Alexander pushed off the doorway, stepping closer. "You shouldn't be wasting your talent cleaning my house." Elena's heart stilled. What was he saying? "You should be studying," he continued, "finishing medical school, becoming the doctor you were meant to be." Elena took a shaky breath. This wasn't happening. No one had ever offered to help her like this. People pitied her. Yes, they murmured "poor girl" under their breath, but no one had ever tried to change her fate. She shook her head, voice barely above a whisper. "I can't afford that." Alexander tilted his head. "What if you didn't have to?" She stiffened. "I don't take charity, Mr. Carter." His jaw ticked, but he didn't look offended. If anything, he looked impressed. "It's not charity," he said. "It's an investment." Elena frowned. "An investment in what?" "In you." Silence. Thick, heavy, charged. Elena searched his face, trying to understand. Why was he doing this? She wasn't special. She was just a girl who had lost her way, fighting to survive. But the way he looked at her, like he saw something even she didn't, made her believe, just for a second, that maybe she was more. "Why?" she whispered. Alexander exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. "I don't know." And that was the truth. He didn't know why he cared, why he suddenly wanted to see her succeed. All he knew was that he couldn't stand the thought of her wasting away in a world that didn't deserve her. Elena's eyes burned, emotion threatening to surface, but she couldn't accept. She wouldn't, because accepting meant opening a door she wasn't ready to walk through, and it meant letting him in. "I should get back to work," she whispered, stepping back. But before she could leave, Alexander caught her wrist again. The same touch as before, only this time, it wasn't just a touch, it was a promise, a silent vow, that he wasn't done with her. And Elena, she wasn't sure she wanted him to be. A sleepless night. That night, Elena lay awake, in her small maid's quarters, staring at the ceiling. She should have been relieved. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt restless, because Alexander Carter wasn't just offering her a future. He was offering her something far more dangerous, hope, and the terrifying part, she wanted to take it. Elena tried, really tried, to go about her duties the next morning, like nothing had changed, like she hadn't spent the whole night thinking about him, about his offer, about the way his fingers had wrapped around her wrist, not in possession, but in silent insistence. Alexander Carter was a man used to getting what he wanted, and right now, it seemed like he wanted her to accept his help. But how could she? How could she let herself step into his world, when she knew, deep down, that it wasn't hers to claim? She belonged in the shadows, not in his light. And yet, when she walked into the dining room to serve breakfast, her heart betrayed her, because there he was, sitting at the grand table, coffee in hand, dressed in an expensive black suit, looking at her like she was the only thing in the room worth noticing. A proposal she wasn't ready for. Elena. His voice was smooth, commanding, dangerous. She paused mid-step, gripping the tray tighter. Sir, Alexander set his cup down and leaned forward, elbows on the table. His gaze was unreadable. I meant what I said last night. She swallowed. I know. Then what's your answer? Silence. Elena's pulse pounded. He was giving her a choice, not ordering her, not forcing her, just waiting. But that was worse, because it meant he actually cared about her decision. And she wasn't used to people caring. Her hands trembled slightly as she set his plate down. I appreciate what you're offering, Mr. Carter, but I can't accept it. His jaw ticked. Why not? Elena hesitated. Because I don't want to owe you. Because if I accept, it means I have to trust you. Because I'm afraid of what happens if I let you in. But she couldn't say that, so she straightened, lifting her chin. I don't take favors. Alexander exhaled sharply, his frustration barely concealed. This isn't a favor, Elena. It's a chance. His voice softened. When was the last time someone gave you a chance? Never. The word sat heavy in her chest, but she forced a small smile. Life doesn't work that way for people like me. His gaze darkened. Maybe it should. Something in the air shifted. A quiet tension. A battle neither of them knew how to fight. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. I'm not giving up on this. She froze. Her heart stuttered. Not I'm not giving up on you. But it felt like that, and that scared her more than anything. The unavoidable pull. For the next few days, Alexander kept his distance. He didn't push. He didn't argue. He just watched. And that was worse, because every time Elena caught him staring, her heart betrayed her. It wasn't just about his offer anymore. It was about the way he looked at her, like she wasn't just a maid, like she was someone, and that terrified her, because the more he looked at her like that, the more she started to believe it, and she couldn't afford to, not when he was so out of reach. But then one night, everything changed, a night that changed everything. It was past midnight, when Elena finally stepped outside the mansion to catch her breath. The cool night air wrapped around her, a silent comfort. She leaned against the railing of the garden terrace, eyes drifting to the sky. Couldn't sleep. The voice sent a shiver down her spine. She turned, only to find Alexander standing a few feet away. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly tousled. Not the polished billionaire the world knew, just a man who looked just as lost as she felt. No, she admitted softly. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. Thinking about my offer. She huffed a quiet laugh. Among other things, Alexander tilted his head. Like what? Like you. But she bit her tongue. Instead, she sighed. Like how unfair life is. How some people get everything, while others get nothing. His jaw clenched. I know more about that than you think. Elena frowned. You were born into wealth. He shook his head, a shadow passing through his eyes. My parents may have been rich, but love, he exhaled bitterly. That was a luxury I never had. Elena's chest tightened. She had always assumed he had everything. But now, she saw the cracks in his armor, and that made him dangerously real. He took another step, closing the distance between them. Elena, his voice was quieter now, intimate. She swallowed. I want to help you, he said, his eyes searching hers. But if you don't want my money, then let me do something else. Her breath hitched. Like what? His fingers brushed her cheek, barely there, but enough to set fire to her skin. Like believing in you. Her heart stopped. No one had ever said that to her before. Tears pricked her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Because if she did, she wasn't sure she'd be able to stop. Don't do this, she whispered. Do what? Make me hope. His thumb traced the corner of her lip. Slow, deliberate. Maybe hope is exactly what you need. And in that moment, Elena realized something terrifying. She wasn't just afraid of accepting his help. She was afraid of accepting him. Because if she let herself fall, she wasn't sure she'd ever recover. Elena didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Not because of her responsibilities. But because she had almost kissed Alexander Carter, her billionaire employer, the man who should have been untouchable, the man whose world was so different from hers, that they should never have crossed paths. and yet, she had wanted it. God help her, but she had wanted him to kiss her. Her fingers brushed against her lips, and a shiver ran down her spine. She could still feel the warmth of his breath, still see the look in his eyes, but she couldn't let herself get lost in the fantasy, because at the end of the day, this wasn't a fairy tale. It was real life, and in real life, maids didn't fall in love with billionaires. Avoidance is impossible. The next morning, Elena did everything to act normal. She walked into the kitchen, prepared Alexander's coffee, and went about her chores, as if nothing had happened, as if her heart hadn't nearly betrayed her, as if she hadn't almost given in. But the moment she stepped into the dining hall with his coffee, her world came to a standstill, because there he was, watching her, seated at the long mahogany table, dressed in his perfectly tailored suit. He looked like the powerful billionaire everyone knew him to be. But his eyes told a different story. They weren't cold. They weren't distant. They were searching for her, Elena. His voice was smooth, controlled. She swallowed hard, and placed the cup in front of him. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Elena," he repeated, softer this time. But she turned quickly, and started walking away. "Elena." His voice held more force now. She hesitated, but only for a second, because she knew, if she stopped, he would see everything she was trying to hide. So she forced herself to keep walking, and for the first time, Alexander Carter let her go. An unexpected invitation. The day passed in a blur of chores, but Elena couldn't stop thinking about him. His voice, his gaze, the way her body had reacted to him. It was dangerous, so dangerously intoxicating. And yet, she wasn't ready for what came next, because just as she was about to finish up for the day, Maria, the head housekeeper, approached her with a knowing smile. "Elena, you're wanted in the main study." Elena frowned. "By who?" Maria lifted a brow. "Who do you think?" Her stomach twisted. "Alexander." Her pulse skyrocketed. "Why?" Maria chuckled. "You'll have to find out yourself, sweetheart." Elena inhaled sharply, and forced herself to move. She could do this. She had to do this. A game of control. When she stepped into the study, Alexander was leaning against the massive bookshelf, arms crossed, watching her like a man with a secret. "Elena," he greeted. She clenched her hands at her sides. "Mr. Carter." His lips twitched. "We're back to that, are we?" She ignored the way his voice sent shivers down her spine. "What do you need?" she asked, keeping her tone professional. A slow smirk tugged at his lips. "Join me for dinner." Elena blinked. "Excuse me." He straightened, closing the distance between them with lazy, confident steps. "I said, join me for dinner." Her heart slammed against her ribs. I don't think that's appropriate." "Why not?" "Because I'm your maid." His smirk disappeared. "Is that what you think?" She forced a smile. "It's the truth." Alexander exhaled slowly, and shook his head. "I don't see you as my maid, Elena." Her breath hitched. "I see you as you." A lump formed in her throat. "I can't," she whispered. He steadied her for a long moment, and then, to her absolute horror, he reached out, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her breath stilled. His touch was gentle, too gentle. And when she finally dared to look up, the emotions in his eyes nearly undid her. She had to escape. "No, I have to go." She turned on her heel, but before she could take another step, he grabbed her wrist. Her pulse spiked. "Elena," he murmured. Her eyes darted to his hand wrapped around hers. The heat of his touch burned her skin. "Please," he said softly, "don't run from me." Her chest ached. God, why did he have to say it like that? Like she was something precious. Like she was something he didn't want to lose. Tears burned her eyes. She wasn't supposed to feel this. She wasn't supposed to want this. But before she could say anything, a voice shattered the moment. A woman from his past. Well, 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 what do we have here?" Elena's blood ran cold. She turned and froze. A woman stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. She was stunning, flawless, the kind of woman who belonged in Alexander Carter's world. And the way she looked at Elena, like she was nothing. "Elena," Alexander said, his tone suddenly guarded. This is Vanessa. Vanessa. Elena recognized the name. Alexander's ex, the woman who had once been his fiancée. And suddenly, the reality of the situation came crashing down. She was a maid, and Alexander Carter was a billionaire. This wasn't a love story. This was a mistake. Her throat tightened. I should go, she whispered. And this time, when she walked away, Alexander didn't stop her. A love put to the test. As Elena hurried back to her room, her chest ached. She told herself she should be relieved, that this was for the best. But why did it feel like her heart was breaking? And why, despite everything, did she still want him? Alexander, on the other hand, clenched his fists as he watched her disappear. Vanessa smirked. So, that's the girl you've been obsessed with. He didn't respond, because the truth was, he didn't have an answer. All he knew was that he wasn't ready to let Elena go. Not yet, not ever. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Carter was afraid, because he was beginning to realize that what he felt for Elena, it wasn't just desire, it was something much, much deeper. Elena sat on her bed, staring at the wall, trying to hold herself together. Her hands gripped the sheets, her breathing uneven. She had been foolish, so foolish, to think that she, a maid, could be something more in Alexander Carter's life. To believe, even for a second, that the way he looked at her meant something. But tonight had shattered every illusion. Vanessa, his ex-fiancée, the woman who belonged in his world, a world that Elena had no place in.
She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to swallow the lump in her throat. This was a reality check, and reality was cruel because maids didn't fall in love with billionaires, and if they did, they suffered unwelcome distractions. The next morning, Elena forced herself out of bed, forced herself to get dressed, forced herself to move. She had made up her mind. She would pretend last night never happened. She would act as if she felt nothing for Alexander, because it was the only way to survive. She entered the kitchen, ready to start breakfast, but Maria's voice pulled her aside. Elena, change of plans. She looked up. What do you mean? Maria sighed. Vanessa is staying for a while. Elena's chest tightened. She is. Maria nodded, giving her a knowing look. And she wants you to be her personal maid. The words hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She tried to keep her face neutral, but Maria was sharp. She placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. Sweetheart, I see the way you look at him, she said softly. Elena froze. Maria's voice held no judgment, only understanding. I also see the way he looks at you. Elena's heart clenched. Maria sighed. But Vanessa isn't the kind of woman who shares, and I don't want you to get hurt. Elena forced a small smile. I'm just a maid, Maria. There's nothing between us. Maria studied her for a long moment. Then, with a sad smile, she patted Elena's cheek. If you say so, sweetheart. But Elena knew that Maria didn't believe her, and neither did she. Playing the part, the moment Elena stepped into Vanessa's suite, she felt the weight of her presence. Vanessa was sitting by the window, looking effortlessly elegant, dressed in silk and diamonds. She turned when Elena entered, her lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. So Vanessa mused, "You're Elena." Elena kept her head down. "Yes, Miss Vanessa." Vanessa stood gracefully, walking towards her. "I must say, you're not what I expected." Elena forced herself to stay still. Vanessa circled her, like a predator analyzing its prey. Then she leaned in slightly. "Tell me, Elena." Her voice was almost a whisper. "How long have you been in love with Alexander?" Elena's breath hitched. She looked up sharply, but Vanessa was smirking, like she already knew the truth, like she had already won. I don't." Vanessa laughed softly, cutting her off. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed. "You don't have to lie." She stepped back, crossing her arms. I can see it in your eyes. The way you tremble at his name. Elena clenched her fists. Vanessa tilted her head. She added, a dangerous glint in her gaze. Does he know? Elena swallowed hard. I'm just a maid, Miss Vanessa, she whispered. Vanessa's smirk widened. Exactly. And just like that, she had dismissed her. Like Elena was nothing. Like she was just a tiny inconvenience. And it hurt more than anything. A battle of the heart. Elena spent the rest of the day forcing herself to act normal, to ignore the ache in her chest, to forget that Vanessa had reminded her of everything she could never have. But her resolve shattered when she entered the study later that evening, only to find Alexander waiting for her. His eyes were stormy, his expression unreadable. Elena, he said, his voice rough. She clenched her hands at her sides. Sir. His jaw tightened. Sir, he repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. She kept her head down. I was told to bring you coffee. Elena, he said again. She swallowed hard and took a step back. I don't have time to talk, sir. He moved closer. Look at me. She didn't, Elena. His voice held an edge of desperation now. Why are you avoiding me? She clenched her jaw. I'm not. Liar. His words cut through her like a blade. Elena, he whispered, tell me what's wrong. She wanted to tell him everything. That she couldn't bear to see Vanessa with him. That she hated how much he affected her. That she was in love with him. But instead, she forced a smile. Nothing's wrong, sir. He exhaled sharply, running a frustrated hand through his hair. Elena, don't do this. She met his gaze, finally, and let him see the truth in her eyes. Do what? She whispered. His lips parted, but no words came out. So she took her chance. She turned around and walked away. And this time, Alexander let her go. But what neither of them knew was, letting go was just another way of breaking a heart that refuses to forget that night. Elena sat by her window, staring at the stars. She told herself she was doing the right thing, that walking away was what she had to do. But then, a soft knock came at her door. Her breath caught. She stood up, hesitated for a moment, then opened it. Her heart nearly stopped, because standing in front of her, looking completely unguarded, completely vulnerable, was Alexander Carter. Elena, he breathed. Her lips parted. What are you doing here? She whispered. His gaze was intense, too intense. I couldn't sleep. She swallowed hard, but before she could finish, he took a step closer. Elena, he murmured, his voice raw, and then he reached out and cupped her face. Her breath hitched, her world stopped, and in that moment, she realized some people weren't meant to love each other, but sometimes they did anyway. Elena, Alexander whispered, his hand still cupping her face. She should have pulled away. She should have shut the door between them, but she couldn't move. Her entire body was frozen under the weight of his touch, his presence. The way his thumb lightly brushed her cheek sent a shiver down her spine. She had spent weeks trying to convince herself that he didn't feel the same way, that he belonged to Vanessa, that she was just a maid. But right now, as he stood at her doorstep, his eyes full of something raw, something undeniable, she realized the truth. She wasn't the only one suffering. The storm inside him. Alexander wasn't okay. He had spent the last few days trying to ignore the unbearable silence between them, trying to pretend that seeing her every day didn't affect him, that her cold, distant gaze didn't drive him insane. But tonight, as he tossed and turned in bed, he had finally accepted it. He needed her, so here he was, standing at her door like a desperate man, begging her to let him in. Elena, he murmured again, his voice hoarse, tell me to leave, and I will. She parted her lips ready to say it, but no words came out, because deep down, she didn't want him to leave.
and he saw it in her eyes. Slowly, she stepped back, leaving the door open, an invitation, a surrender, and Alexander stepped inside, a dangerous proximity. Elena wrapped her arms around herself as Alexander closed the door behind him. Her room felt smaller now, his presence filling every inch of it. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to care, but he did, and that was what scared her the most. "Elena," he murmured, his voice gentler this time. "Talk to me." She turned her face away. "There's nothing to talk about, sir." He flinched at the word, "sir." She had never called him that before. "Elena." His voice was lower now, a quiet plea. "Why are you acting like this?" She inhaled sharply. "Like what?" "Like you don't care." Her heart twisted painfully. If only he knew. She clenched her fists. "Because I don't." His expression hardened. "That's a lie." She bit her lip. "You're my boss, Alexander. I'm just your maid." "Damn it, Elena." His voice cracked with frustration. "You are not just my maid." Silence. His chest rose and fell, his breathing ragged, and for the first time, Elena saw it. The storm in his eyes, the same one she had been fighting all along. The unspoken confession. Alexander took a step closer, then another, until there was barely any space left between them. "Elena," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Do you think I don't see it?" She swallowed hard. "See what?" He exhaled sharply. "The way your hands shake when I'm close." Her breath hitched. "The way your eyes avoid mine when you think I'm looking." Her throat tightened. "The way you pull away when all I want is to hold you." Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "Stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. But Alexander wasn't finished. His hand lifted, gently brushing a stray tear off her cheek. "Tell me you feel nothing, Elena." She couldn't. "Tell me," he pleaded, "and I'll walk away." She parted her lips, her entire body trembling, but the words refused to come out, because it was a lie, and he knew it. Alexander's expression softened. "Elena." Her breath came out shakily, and then she broke, her hands fisted into his shirt, gripping him like he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. And in that moment, Alexander lost his restraint. A love that feels like fire. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, tightly, desperately, like he had been starving for this touch, like he had been waiting for this moment forever. "Elena," he breathed against her hair, his voice filled with relief and longing. She squeezed her eyes shut, her fingers clutching onto him. She hated how much she needed this, how much she needed him, but nothing else mattered anymore. Not Vanessa, not the world outside this room, not the consequences of this love, because right now, there was only them, a love that shouldn't exist. Alexander slowly pulled back, just enough to look into her eyes, and for the first time, Elena didn't hide. She let him see everything, the love, the pain, the fear. His hand lifted to her face, his fingers lightly tracing her jaw. His touch sent a shiver down her spine. "I don't care about anything else," he murmured. She swallowed. "You should." "I can't." A shaky breath escaped her lips. "This is dangerous, Alexander." His gaze darkened. "I don't care." "You should," she whispered. "You're a billionaire." "I'm just." His lips brushed her forehead. "Don't." She closed her eyes, her heart aching. "This won't end well." His arms tightened around her. "Then let's not think about the end." She wanted to argue, but when she met his eyes again, she knew it was too late. This wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just a passing moment. This was love, real, raw, undeniable, and neither of them could walk away anymore. Elena barely slept that night. Even after Alexander had left her room, she could still feel his warmth, the way his arms had wrapped around her like she was something precious, not just a maid, not just someone beneath him. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding. What had she done? She had let him in, let herself feel, and now, there was no turning back. As the first rays of the morning sun streamed through the window, Reality came crashing down like a storm. This wasn't just a secret, it was forbidden, and if anyone found out, she would lose everything. The coldness in his eyes. Elena stepped into the grand dining hall with trembling hands, carrying a tray of fresh coffee. Her heart stuttered as she saw him sitting at the head of the table. Alexander, the man who had held her like she was his entire world, just hours ago. But now, he was different. His expression was unreadable. His jaw clenched, his eyes distant as if last night had never happened. Her stomach twisted. She forced herself to move, setting his coffee cup down in front of him. And still, he didn't look at her. Her throat tightened. Had she been a mistake? Had he regretted it? She turned to leave, swallowing the lump in her throat. Elena. His voice was low, rough. She froze. Slowly she turned back around, praying he would meet her eyes. He didn't. Instead, he stared at the steam rising from his cup, his fingers tightening around the porcelain. We need to be careful. Her heart cracked. Careful, not happy, not together. Just careful. I understand, sir. Alexander flinched at the word, but he didn't correct her, and that hurt the most. A painful distance. Elena forced herself to act normal. The rest of the day, she scrubbed the floors. She ironed Alexander's shirts. She did everything she was supposed to do, but with a hollow ache in her chest, because every time she passed by him, he wouldn't even glance at her, because he had chosen silence, and she was breaking. By evening, the mansion was filled with guests, businessmen, celebrities, people who lived in his world, and among them, Vanessa. Elena felt sick as she watched her drape herself over Alexander's arm, whispering something in his ear. And worse, he let her. Her fingers dug into her palm as she tried to look away, tried not to care. But when Vanessa tilted his chin up and kissed his cheek, something inside Elena snapped. She turned and rushed toward the kitchen, her breath unsteady, her heart in pieces. She had known this was dangerous. She had known she was just a maid, so why did it hurt this much? The confrontation. Elena. She didn't turn, didn't stop scrubbing the already spotless counter, as if the movement could drown out the pain. Elena. His voice was closer now, then warm fingers wrapped around her wrist. Her breath hitched as Alexander gently pulled her to face him. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let him see her tears. What do you want, sir? Her voice was cold. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Don't do that. Do what? Talk to me like I'm a stranger. She clenched her jaw. That's what we are, aren't we? Alexander cursed under his breath. I hate this, he murmured. I hate pretending like last night didn't mean anything. Her heart jumped, but she forced herself to stay firm. You didn't seem to mind when Vanessa was kissing you. His eyes darkened. I didn't kiss her back, but you let her. Silence. He exhaled sharply, stepping closer, his hand tightening around her wrist. Elena, I'm trying to protect you. She swallowed. From what? His expression hardened. From me. The walls crumble. Elena's breath caught in her throat. From him. She searched his face, trying to understand. I want you, he admitted, his voice low and pained. More than I've ever wanted anything in my life. Her chest tightened. But if anyone finds out, he trailed off, his jaw clenching. She knew what he was saying. If people found out he had feelings for his maid, she would be the one to suffer. His reputation would survive, but hers wouldn't. Elena, he whispered, his fingers brushing against hers. I don't know how to fix this. She closed her eyes. Neither did she. They stood there, inches apart, trapped in a love they couldn't have, until suddenly, Elena stepped back, her heart breaking, with every inch of distance she created. Then maybe, she whispered, her voice shaking, maybe it's better if we stop now. Alexander stiffened. His breath came out in a harsh exhale, his fists tightening at his sides. But he didn't argue, didn't stop her, because maybe she was right. A love that can't be erased. The days passed like a blur. Elena forced herself to be numb. She smiled when she had to, worked harder than ever. But inside, she was shattered. She avoided Alexander at all costs, kept her head down, focused on her job. But at night, she found herself staring at her door, waiting, hoping for him to come back, for him to say he couldn't stay away. But he never did, and every night, she broke a little more, until one evening, a knock at the door changed everything. Her heart leaped. She rushed to open it, and there he was, disheveled, breathless, eyes filled with desperation. "Elena," he rasped. She didn't even have time to react before he grabbed her face and crashed his lips against hers. Alexander's lips crashed against hers, desperate, raw, hungry for everything he had been holding back. Elena's body stiffened for a moment, her mind screaming that this was wrong. But her heart betrayed her. She melted into him, gripping his shirt, as if letting go would shatter her completely. His hands cupped her face, his touch both gentle and possessive, like she was something fragile, something precious, like she was his. A quiet whimper escaped her lips, and that was all it took. Alexander groaned, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss, as if he was trying to memorize every inch of her. It wasn't just passion, it was love. A love that had been denied for too long, a love that could no longer be ignored. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not their differences, not their worlds, not even the consequences. Because when Alexander Carter kissed Elena Foster, it felt like forever. The pain of reality. But forever wasn't promised, and reality always came back to destroy dreams. Elena was the first to break away, breathless, her heart in chaos. Her voice shook. "We can't do this." Alexander's forehead rested against hers, his fingers still tangled in her hair. "Tell me you don't love me," he whispered. Her throat tightened. She couldn't say it, because it would be a lie. "Elena," he pleaded, "don't run from this." Tears burned her eyes. "I have to." She stepped back, breaking his hold, because as much as she loved him, love wasn't always enough. If they stayed like this, she would be the one to suffer. People would talk. His world would never accept her. She was just a maid, and he was Alexander Carter. "I can't be your secret," she whispered. Alexander's jaw clenched. "You're not a secret." She forced a small sad smile. "Then why are you afraid to fight for me?" Silence. Because she had hit the truth. He loved her, yes, but was he ready to stand against the world for her? She wasn't sure, and that uncertainty hurt more than anything. She turned away, blinking back tears. "Goodbye, Alexander." And this time, he didn't stop her. A love that refuses to die. Days passed. Elena quit her job. She packed her small bag and left the Carter mansion, leaving behind the man who had stolen her heart. She had nothing now, no money, no security, but she had her dignity. She walked through the city, feeling like a ghost, as if a part of her had died, as if she had left her heart behind with him. But she refused to cry. She refused to regret, because loving Alexander had been the most beautiful and painful thing she had ever done. And if she had to choose, she would do it all over again, even if it broke her. Meanwhile, Alexander sat in his office, gripping a whiskey glass, staring out at the city. His empire, his success, everything he had built, and yet, none of it mattered, because she was gone. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Carter felt truly empty. He had spent years controlling everything, winning every battle, but this was the one war he had lost, and he had lost her. His hand tightened around the glass. No, he wasn't ready to lose her. Not yet, not ever. The grand gesture. 2 weeks later, Elena sat in a small cafe, staring at the classified ads in the newspaper. She needed a new job, a new life, but every word blurred together, because all she could think about was him. Then suddenly, gasps echoed around the cafe. People turned toward the TV screen, mounted on the wall, and when Elena looked up, her heart stopped, because Alexander Carter was on live television, standing at a podium, in front of a room full of reporters, and what he said next changed everything. "The world knows the truth. I have an announcement to make," Alexander said, his voice steady, but his eyes held a fire. Elena had never seen before. The reporters leaned forward, waiting. He took a deep breath. For years, I have let the world dictate how I live, who I love, what is expected of me. Murmurs filled the room. Elena's hands trembled. I was afraid, he admitted, his jaw clenching. Afraid of losing my reputation. Afraid of breaking the rules society has placed around me. His gaze hardened. But I won't be afraid anymore. The room fell silent. Then his next words shook everything. I love Elena Foster. Elena gasped. People in the cafe turned to her, whispering in shock. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because Alexander Carter, the billionaire, who was supposed to keep his love a secret, had just told the entire world. A love worth fighting for. Elena's heart raced. This couldn't be real. He wouldn't do this. He couldn't. But then her phone rang. She hesitated, then picked it up. Elena. Her breath caught. Alexander. His voice was softer now, raw with emotion. Did you see? He asked. Tears welled in her eyes. You. She choked on her words. You told everyone. He exhaled sharply. I told the world, Elena. A pause. Because I'm not ashamed of you. Her lips trembled. I don't care what anyone thinks, he continued. I don't care about the consequences. All I care about is you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She had waited so long to hear those words, to know that she wasn't just someone to be hidden away. And no, he had given her everything. Elena, his voice was barely above a whisper. Come back to me. Her heart screamed, yes, and for the first time in her life, she stopped running. The reunion hours later, Elena stood in front of his penthouse, her hands shaking. The door opened, and there he was, looking at her like she was his entire world. Elena, he breathed. Tears filled her eyes. I love you, she whispered. His breath hitched. Then he kissed her, deep, passionate, final. This time she didn't run. This time she didn't push him away. Because this time, they had chosen each other, no matter the cost. And for the first time, love had won.